So how do you price your work as a freelancer? We have a lot to discuss, and this section will review several different ways you can price your projects. I hope this section will make you feel more confident, not only in pricing your work, but also helping you maximize your profits by helping you find the highest price possible without that risk of losing a client because you priced too high. And that's the biggest constraint on pricing, I think, that scares most freelancers. Finding that balance between charging a reasonable, profitable rate for yourself, but also not being so high it turns the clients toward other, more affordable options. Once you have a pricing system in place, you'll want to be able to easily find that just right middle pricing point. As you start to price more and more projects, you will develop your own pricing model. Some freelancers can think of the perfect quote right after hearing a project brief, while some struggle because of the complexity of it all. Let's review several different ways you can price so you can start to find out which pricing model or combination of pricing models may work best for you. There are two main ways to price projects. You can charge an hourly rate or a fixed project price, and you can even use a mix of both. Fixed pricing is simple and straightforward, just like going to the store and buying items off the shelf. Let's say I'm giving a client quote for a website design. Once I find out the scope of the project, I charge a fixed rate of, let's say, $4,500. If the project takes me 10 hours, I still make $4,500. If it takes me 400 hours, I still make $4,500. You can see how this way of pricing could be beneficial if you're quick at completing your tasks, and detrimental if it takes longer than you expected. You can even break fixed pricing quotes into different line items to show the client exactly how we added up that $4,500 in our quote. For example, this breakdown: $2,000 for design and branding, $1,500 for creating a custom WordPress template, and $1,000 for coding and development, with a $4,500 total. So the big benefits for fixed rate pricing are: number one, you have total control over how much you receive for a given project. Number two, you can make more money if you move through your work quickly. Number three, the client has more certainty about total project costs before committing. Of course, there are also downsides to think about with fixed project quotes. So number one, if a project takes longer than anticipated, you take the hit, as you cannot go back and increase your fixed quote unless it's built into the contract, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Number two, it's not easy to price fixed rates when you have not quoted for that project type before. It's a little bit easier to price hourly, but a little bit harder to learn how to price fixed rates. On the other side, there is that hourly pricing model, where you can simply give the client an hourly rate and maybe a projected time range for each line item. For our same web design quote above, this is what an hourly rate quote might look like. $45 hourly rate, and that's broken down by the following: 20 to 25 hours for design and branding. Notice the range, it's not an exact number because we're not sure the exact amount of hours we'll need. 10 to 15 hours for creating a custom WordPress template, and 10 to 12 hours for coding and development, customizing a store plugin. Total hours, of course all of this will be projected, is a range from 40 to 52 hours. As you can see, I included my example hourly rate, but I also need to include projected hourly ranges for each item or project, as the next natural question a client has is how many hours might it take for me to complete a project. Hourly is an easier way to price for those freelancers who have yet to know how many hours it takes to complete each project, as you can include a wide range in your hours for that line item to protect yourself. The benefits to pricing hourly are: hourly is an easier way to price for those freelancers who have yet to know how many hours it takes to complete each project, as you include those wide ranges in hours for each line item. Number two, you're guaranteed to know how much you're going to make per hour you work, and it's easier to manage your income and cash flow projections. Number three, clients have more clarity of how much you make per hour, which could make them feel more at ease. Number four, when pricing scopes get a little bit larger, it is easier to adjust pricing for the additional new work items by just adding more hours. Of course, there's some downsides to hourly pricing as well. Number one, this is the biggest downside. If you complete a project in less hours than expected, you will make less overall on the project. In some ways, you're being punished for being quick and effective. Not a great motivator to move fast and to do well. Number 2, clients may feel your quote is more speculative, and it could be higher project cost if the project goes longer than anticipated. As we've discovered, there are benefits and downsides to each way to price. I usually recommend for those just starting out to start quoting hourly rates until you start feeling more comfortable with how long it takes you to complete projects. Once you've quoted several hourly projects, you can try out fixed pricing so you can increase your overall income. Now that you know what problems may arise, and you can price ahead of those issues. It takes experience to start coming up with solid fixed rate pricing, but it does give you a chance to make more per hour if you move quickly and efficiently with projects. There are times we can use both fixed and hourly rate in the same project, especially those projects with an undefined scope. Project scope is the total breadth of the project. Project scopes can change and become larger if a client decides to add a mobile app design, for example, to our simple web design project. If they add new items to the scope, it changes, and so can the pricing. If you stuck with fixed pricing model for the web design quote, and they wanted to expand that scope and add another project later on, you can send them a new quote and start the process all over again with a new project, or build it into your contract clause when you do charge an hourly rate for anything that exceeds the original project scope. This makes expanding and adding smaller projects easy without having to draw up another fixed rate quote or contract or produce another proposal. If the project scope is increased dramatically, perhaps it might be smart to start over with another fixed price quote. For smaller scope creeps, as they call it, or small increases in scope, sometimes building in that hourly pricing is smart and makes it easy for both you and the client to have continuing work projects that are easy to add on. That comes to my next point about the benefit to hourly pricing. For long-term clients, sometimes they prefer to switch over to an hourly rate. This helps them better project costs, but also helps them continually give you steady stream of smaller and larger projects. If you did several projects per week, imagine having to send them a fixed quote for each one of those different projects. Being able to just keep a log of your hours and send them a monthly invoice might be less hassle for the both of you. Finding out whether to price hourly or a fixed rate is never straightforward, but with time you'll learn what feels best for both you and your client. The next few lessons will help you figure out how to find your hourly rate, as well as how to think about pricing fixed rate projects with confidence.